Manager of Admissions and Recruitment for the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law, or GDip ICL for short, as we like to shorten things here at Queen's. So it's great to have everybody here present for today's webinar. We're going to go through some elements of the admission process in order to inform all of our current applicants or prospective applicants about the admission process and to provide you with some information to help you with closing out your admission process and make sure that your application gets submitted to us for admission into the program. So we have a lot of information to go through today, and we have a fantastic team. My entire team is here today to respond to your questions. We're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping tips here at the beginning, but I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump right into the presentation. All right. So this is me, a lovely picture of me over in the Smith School of Business. So I'm the Manager of Admissions and Recruitment. My main focus here is to provide you with as much information about the admission cycle, about what you're currently experiencing and what you should be experiencing over the next couple of months. We really want to make sure that everybody who has submitted an application, paid that admission fee, make sure that we provide you with a little bit of information in regards to a complete assessment of the entire process. So it looks like we're already receiving questions in. So I'm going to go over some stuff here as I hide my floating menus here. I want to make sure that we can respond to everybody's questions throughout today's session. So what I'm going to ask you is to make sure that when you are providing questions that you are only providing a single question. Don't utilize the chat to ask questions. There is a specific Q&A box that you're going to enter in your questions there. And then our team will be able to provide you direct answers directly to your question. So I see there are some individuals who are utilizing the question or the chat box. Please bump those over to the Q&A panel and utilize that spot to ask any questions. As you're asking questions, we ask you to only submit one question at a time. Whenever we're responding to the emails that we receive in our immigration diploma at queensu.ca inbox, we receive quite a few questions. It's a great venue for you to be able to submit a bunch of questions. But here we want you to do one question at a time if you would please be so kind to do so. There's a lot of you here today. We have a great number of individuals here. We just want to make sure that when we're responding to questions, we respond to your questions one at a time. We're going to write back to them directly. We're not going to publish anything. So just make sure that you're being aware of that. And please be patient as we answer questions. We're going to get a lot of questions in this session today. We're going to try to get to everything throughout the hour that we have today. But if there's not enough time, we're going to ask you to submit your questions to immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca, and we'll answer them via email. Before we begin, I want to make sure that we acknowledge the traditional Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe territories where Queen's University sits. I'm very fortunate to work at Queen's, to live in Kingston, Ontario, and to be on these lands that were unceded and taken from our Indigenous Canadians. We want to make sure that atrocities are acknowledged, are responded to, and that reconciliation can properly happen in ways that are really meaningful to the Indigenous population of this fine country. We need to make amends. We need to acknowledge the wrongs that have been in the past, and we need to move forward positively. Now more than ever, everybody needs to come together to support one another. And I hope that through acknowledgement of our lands, where Queen's is situated, that we can begin to do so. So here's our agenda for today. So we're going to do a little bit of a brief program overview. Then we're going to get into the admission process. I'm going to provide some admission requirements details, the application structure. Then we're going to look at some key dates and deadlines, things that you should have already experienced as a current applicant into the program, but it's going to provide you a little bit more information about the process. We're going to take a look at next steps. So we're going to take a look at what you're going to be going through after April 1st and then into the summer. I have some frequently asked questions. So we do have quite a few questions that come into our inbox. We're receiving quite a few questions already right now, but we're going to take some time to answer the more commonly asked ones. I already do have those built into the presentation, but I want to make sure that we acknowledge some of those that are consistently coming in. Also, we're going to then we're going to take some time. I'm going to stop presenting. We're just going to kind of sit quietly, I suppose, as our team answers as many questions in the Q&A box. So please, by all means, ask your questions. But again, if you would be so kind as to submit single questions at a time, we're going to respond to you in written format. And then we'll just ask that if anything doesn't get answered, that you submit an email to us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca after the presentation. So let's take a look at the program. So the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law, it's the only English language program to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. A lot of you already know that structure. It is a fantastic opportunity for an industry that is extremely important and vital to the Canadian landscape, that there is some significant regulations and structure around it. Queen's is a proud partner of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. We are grateful to be that English language pathway partner. And of course, we have our sister institution of the University de Montreal, who is our French language pathway partner. And it is that only way that if you're looking at becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, or RCIC for short, this is the pathway to take. Some of you may have taken past programs in this same educational department. Maybe you've taken college level immigration consultant programs. This is now the new pathway into this program. So just make sure that you understand what we offer, and that it's a fantastic educational source for anybody who wants to get into the world of becoming an immigration consultant. But of course, our program expands beyond just becoming an RCIC. If you're looking at becoming a government employee, if you're looking at working for private industry who have arms of their corporations globally, who always look for hiring or immigration of staff members or employees into different countries, this is a fantastic venue to receive this information and to really be able to expand your knowledge about immigration and citizenship law, and to support you in supporting those who are interested in becoming Canadians, who are looking at moving around the world, and who need that support in a legal perspective. This is the correct program for you. Tons of viable career opportunities and pathways for all of our graduates. And we just hope that this program meets exactly what you're looking at to get out of your professional life. And I think that we have an amazing slate of courses and global subject matter experts teaching our programs. There are 9 courses in total. A full-time student can complete our program in a year, so 12 months, 3 terms, back to back to back. And you're learning from just the best of the best in the industry. There are current legal professionals, there are current immigration consultants who are here, and just people who get the industry, who can provide really great information and knowledge about what you're going to be experiencing by getting into the immigration and citizenship field. Our program is completely online. I've already seen a couple questions like that come up in the Q&A, but we are a fully online program. There's no need to come to Queen's, to come to Kingston in order to take this program. You are going to be completing that wherever you are located. It's why when we get you to take the self-assessment via our website, we ask you what your internet connection is like. And we ask you if you have a quiet place to study or a location where you can kind of just go and learn. We want to make sure that you're able to access our program successfully. So just be aware that your internet connection is going to be really key when it comes to taking our program, but it is a completely online based program. No need to come to Kingston, no need to plan to change countries if you're coming to us from abroad, no need to change provinces if you're within the country. You can do this program wherever you're located. So here's kind of the pathway to get yourself to becoming an RCIC. And I do notice that there is a typo there in the top, and I apologize for that. But basically, we're looking at it 4 key stages here for all of our prospective students to really understand where they're going when it comes to the completion of this program, getting into the immigration consultant field. So we have applicant, we have student, we have graduate, and we have the RCIC. So the applicant situation right now is the pathway to transition from applicant to student is the admission process, exactly where you currently are. Then when it comes to student to graduate, you're doing the coursework. You're completing those 9 courses. You're achieving the B- average that you need to achieve on every single course in order to graduate. And then when it comes to graduation to becoming an RCIC, that's when you're taking the college's entry to practice exam, or EPE for short. So all of our graduates are eligible to take the EPE to become regulated Canadian immigration consultants. But of course, that's a future step for people to consider. Right now, though, you are here. You're situated right in that admission process. It's why we want to provide this information about the admission process here today, because you do have quite a pathway in front of you from this point all the way up to becoming an RCIC. And we want to provide as much clarity as possible on the application. So let's talk about some of the application requirements. So currently we have the fall 2022 application open. So many of you have already applied for that. The application opened in late 2021, and the application is going to close April 1st, 2022. So for you here in the webinar today, you've already applied. That close date isn't really going to factor into anything that you really need to focus in on. You've applied, your application is submitted. This is the case for anybody that you may know who wishes to apply to the program. Maybe you're in a chat or somewhere in social media, or maybe you just know of other individuals who are interested in getting into this profession, and they're really interested in our program. Make sure that they're aware that they must complete an application before or on April 1st. After April 1st, the application shuts down, and we then go into the admission review process. We can't accept applications beyond that date. So if you do know anybody who is interested in applying, make sure that they submit their application prior to or on April 1st. There are, of course, key components of the application that I want to highlight. So you have your personal data. So you provide your name, your email address, your phone number, your physical address, your current location. You provide your previous post-secondary studies. And for our applicants, we require you to identify all of your post-secondary studies. I know that a lot of you have done some fantastic work in master's and PhD programs. You have to identify that on your application, but the primary focus for us for the admission review process is that bachelor's degree. So while some of you may have done a bachelor's and a master's, and you've only at this point submitted your master's transcript, thinking that that's the only one we need, that's actually incorrect. We need you to provide both your bachelor's and your master's transcripts. The way that you do that is through the application. You would have had an opportunity to upload PDF copies of your transcripts. So if you have a copy of them or can access a copy from your previous post-secondary institutions, you can then take those transcripts, convert them to PDF, making sure that they're English, and you can upload them with your application. Now, because all of you have already applied to the program, what you're going to have to do is send these PDF copies of transcripts into the School of Graduate Studies office. So the SGS office, School of Graduate Studies, they manage the application process. So they're in charge of making sure that all of the documents are received and they're submitted over to our program for assessment. So you're going to want to email them those PDF copies of your transcripts that you didn't provide with your application. And there's a way to check to see what's still outstanding on your application, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But make sure that you definitely provide those bachelor's transcripts. That is our primary basis of admission. We utilize that to determine if you're eligible to our program. So make sure that you submit that. If you don't have your bachelor's degree transcript completed, so maybe you completed some years, or maybe you didn't complete it at all and you finished another program, of course, those are our access pathway candidates, and you'll be needing to submit any transcripts that you have, as well as a couple additional pieces of information, which we'll go over in a little bit. Oh, sorry. Also, some other things that we request is the GDip ICL program details. Do you want to be full-time or part-time in our program, or if you're going to be applying through the access pathway as also listed. We also need your statements of interest. So there are 2 questions within the application. Why did you apply, and what are your plans post-graduation? We want to hear from you and try to be as verbose as possible. If you haven't provided those details, you'll have an opportunity to take a look at your application. Hopefully you can provide those through the School of Graduate Studies, but we need to know why you're interested in the program. So anybody that you're talking to in regards to their interest in applying, make sure that people fill out those sections in great detail. One of the big areas that we receive a lot of questions about is the English language proficiency test requirements. So there's a specific requirement for our applicants when it comes to exemptions from having to provide a CALE or a TOEFL or an IELTS academic test. Those requirements will be detailed a little bit later in this presentation, but we do request ELPT scores from a lot of our applicants. That is not something that you provide at the time of your application. You would enter in the information, like you would type it into the open text boxes there with your application, but we do need your scores submitted directly to the School of Graduate Studies office. The way that you can do that is by directly communicating with them via email, making the organization that you took your test with. So for example, CALE, you can have CALE submit your scores directly to the School of Graduate Studies, or you can send them via a PDF. So just make sure that you are addressing that you are getting those in, and that we're able to see those scores. Again, like I mentioned, there are exemption requirements or opportunities. We'll make mention of those a little bit later. Looks like we're getting a few questions in regards to how many spots are available for part-time and full-time students. We have some set guidelines behind the scenes as to what we'd like to see in our class, but we really don't have any specifics. I will say that we have more full-time spots than we do part-time spots. And for those of you who are applying to the fall, you're absolutely eligible for either full-time or part-time, depending on what you listed on your application. For our winter applicants, there is no opportunity to apply part-time. So anybody who applies in the winter, or for those of you who may defer an application to the winter, or maybe you're going to apply for the winter term, you can only apply for full-time studies at that point. So just be mindful of that. No specific numbers at this point. And again, full-time and part-time are available for fall, full-time only for winter. There's some additional details that we ask in the application, but there's a wealth of information in those first bullet points that I've already mentioned. Let's talk about the different statuses here for your application. There's basically two different statuses that we can consider you at this point. The first one is application submitted status. It's where you've submitted your application, you've paid the application fee, you have uploaded some of your documents or all of your transcripts. Ideally, all would have been received. And perhaps you've provided your references names. So you need those two professional references, or one academic and one professional reference. But perhaps at this point, we haven't quite received those documents yet. So that means that your application is incomplete. We haven't received everything to move you from application submitted to documents received. This is the key area. It's why we're having this webinar today. We want to make sure that all of our applicants move themselves from application submitted to documents received. And I can talk to you in the next slide about how to check to see what's still outstanding and what to do to make sure that you are moving your application from submitted to documents received. The second status is that documents received status. Basically, at this point, you've submitted your application, you've paid the admissions or the application fee, you've provided all transcripts, and your references have provided their references for you. That means everything is complete. We are able to now take your file and add it to our list for our admission review process, which begins after April 1st. So that means you're done. You've provided all the information we need, and we'll actually be able to review your application for admission into the program. The point of this slide is to make sure that I stress the importance of getting your application moved from submitted to received. It's really vital to make sure that we get everybody into documents received status so that we have a really a great amount of individuals to review when it comes to that admission process. So you may be asking yourself, how do I get my application to the documents received status? So step one is to make sure that you log into your School of Graduate Studies application account. So if you haven't done so already, you haven't logged in, do so right away. If you haven't received any emails from Queen's once you've submitted your application, that's a bit odd. Check your junk mail, check your spam folders, or reach out to the School of Graduate Studies at grad.studies, queensu.studies@queensu.ca. It's important for you to find out that to get logged into the system, to make sure that you're reviewing your application and that you know what is still outstanding. There's a great chart there that tells you what has been received and what hasn't been received. And it'll also detail some notes that the School of Graduate Studies staff has added to your file. Maybe you've submitted a document that you feel is correct. The School of Graduate Studies may disagree based on the requirements and the rules and regulations of our industry. And you'll want to have to resubmit those documents to make sure that things get completed. Log into the system and make sure you check your file. That is the #1 piece of advice that I can provide to everybody today. Log in and find out what's outstanding. The second step is to review. Take a look at what's there and provide the information as quickly as you can back to the School of Graduate Studies office. If it's an outstanding transcript, if you didn't submit PDFs with your application, or as I mentioned, if you submitted incorrect PDFs, make sure that you reach out to the School of Graduate Studies and send the correct transcripts. For references receive emails from Queens based on what you put into your application. And we then kind of review, and they receive documents and they submit them right back to us. If we haven't received your reference materials, it means that your references haven't completed the forms that they've been sent. The first step there is to reach out to your reference, see if they've received anything, get them to check their junk and spam folders, see if they've received anything from Queens. If they didn't, make sure that you work with the School of Graduate Studies to try and have those documents resent, just so that they can complete the forms, and then that will complete your application. Step 3 is if you've previously applied to our program and you want things migrated from a previous application, again, reach out to School of Graduate Studies to see if that's possible. The application is not the program under the program's control. This is something that we work with the School of Graduate Studies on. They're a fantastic organization with a lot of experience in managing these things. They can help you further with your application. Make sure that you work with them. You get all of your transcripts in, your references are reviewed and submitted as well, and then we receive them and your application's moved over to the documents received point. A note on transcripts here. So of course, we want to make sure that we receive your PDF copies in English at 100% size. Ideally, that you're able to list all of your grades, all of your averages, the fact that you completed. For anybody who may have done 2 different institutions for their bachelor's work, that you submit both of those transcripts. We need to see everything that you've done in your post-secondary education. If you didn't submit them with your application, you can get your Canadian post-secondary institutions to email copies of transcripts directly to this email address that's on the screen. You can also do the same option with international student or international post-secondary institutions. If you're able to make sure that they email transcripts in, then ideally they would do so. But if not, you can have them mailed directly to the School of Graduate Studies. And it looks like my screen's cutting off here. So there's a lot of information online as to where this address is, but the postal code is K7L, so Kilo 7 Lima 3 Nancy 6. So there's the address where you would send any physical transcripts. When it comes to email correspondence with all of our offices, School of Graduate Studies or our program, a lot of you have probably already emailed places. You've emailed our immigration diploma at queensu.ca asking for further information. We ask you to be patient. A lot of us are experiencing high volumes of email correspondence because we all are still working virtually and our program staff are all working remotely. We just ask you that you be patient in what you've sent to us, but if you're still going to be sending us materials, make sure that you include as much information as you can in that subject line. The key one being your application reference number. We want to see that somewhere within either the subject line or the body of your email, just so that we can sort through your application quicker and provide you a direct response. If we don't receive your application reference number, we'll have to reply and ask you for that, and that just wastes time. The more information you provide to us up front, the better. So let's talk to those individuals who are in document received status. So you've logged into your SGS account and you've noticed that all of your materials have been received. That's fantastic. Your application is complete, and now we're just waiting for the admission process to begin to review your application. There are still some things you can do, though, that we recommend that you consider to get yourself prepared if you are made an offer of admission. The key thing that we really recommend is that you review all of your Queen's emails. Go back through any email correspondence that you've received from us, review it, read it in depth, try to figure out all of the different elements of each of those components, and just try to provide that information into yourself as much as possible. You need to educate yourself about what Queen's has available to you. We have great resources. Our program website has a ton of great information for you. Take a look at that and really determine what you need to know in order to be successful into the program. The second bullet point there is apply for the GDip ICL Bursary. There is a bursary specific for our program. The application is now open, and we will actually be able to provide you with the link to that during the Q&A. We'll put it into the chat and we'll send it out to everybody. But there is a bursary application. We recommend all of our students complete it, just so that there is some financial assistance that we can provide to some of our students. We really encourage you to take a look at the immigration consultant industry in some way, shape, or form. Read articles, watch the news, just determine what's happening in the industry to be educated on what to expect as a professional. Learn more about Queen's, as I mentioned. We also encourage you to join our Facebook group. So the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law Facebook group is active. It's a great place for information about the admission process. So we'll be able to communicate there. Not fully. I would still say that the best way to communicate with us is via email, but it's a great place for you to go like the page and be provided additional information. There is really great information on the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants website. Go visit their webpage, find out more about the entry to practice exam, and then try taking courses about self-directed learning. Much of the program is built around you learning on your own time, doing readings and assignments virtually, and then obviously attending your mandatory tutorials. But those are only 2 hours per week per course. You're going to be doing a lot of your own work on your own time. So there's great programs out there like Coursera's Learning How to Learn, and it kind of helps you with self-directed, self-guided learning styles. Utilize those and learn about how you're going to be experiencing the course. We're going to be providing a lot of great information to our new students. Once we send out all of our letters and we have our final class list together, you're going to receive a lot of really great information about preparing you for the program. So wait for that. But in the meantime, you can do some work on your own time to understand what is expected from all of our students. Again, this is the time to better prepare yourself. Take this time, utilize it as best as you can. Once your application is in, you've got a bit of a wait ahead of you. So we don't begin the review of any application until after April 1st. And even at that point, it's going to take several weeks. So like I mentioned, you've got some time here between April 1st to what's looking like in late June, early July, before we provide our final decision on your application. Take that time and really educate yourself. What we really stress here, though, is that you need to be patient with us when it comes to this process. We appreciate this is a big step for all of our applicants. We want you to be in our program and be successful, but it's going to take us some time. So just be patient with us. We will provide every single completed application a full admission review. So long as you've provided all of our documents, your application is complete. Your application will be reviewed and you will receive a notice from us as to if it was successful or not. So this is the point of the presentation. I want to go through some brief, frequently asked questions that we seem to get quite often in our immigration diploma inbox. Hopefully it's going to answer a lot of your questions here. But again, we will have that opportunity to continue on with the Q&A after we go through these, but this should answer or clarify a lot of those general questions that we typically get. So the main question here is, when is the deadline for submitting my documents? So there isn't a specific document deadline established for our program yet. We're going to be introducing one for the winter 2023 application. But what we're telling all of our applicants is, when you apply, you still have a little bit of time to provide us with your documents, to work with the School of Graduate Studies and have things submitted directly to us. We encourage that all of your documents get in no later than April 8th, 2022, so that you're reaching out to your previous post-secondary institutions. They're emailing transcripts directly to Queen's, the School of Graduate Studies inbox. They're sending things to you. You're sending things into the School of Graduate Studies office. You have some time still to complete your application. We really need these documents, though, as early as you can submit them to complete your application. Without all of your documents, without your references submitted, we can't finalize a review of your application, and we can't move you forward into the program. Make sure, again, you're logging into the SGS application system, you see what is still outstanding, and you're working with your references, your previous post-secondary institutions, and the School of Graduate Studies to finalize all these documents. When and how will I hear about my application assessment? So as I mentioned, this is going to be a lengthy process for us. We look at all of our applications over the course of several weeks, potentially several months. We are going to be getting back to everyone either in late June or early July, depending on the timing of our admission review process. There may be opportunities that you'll hear from us in between. Maybe we'll require some additional information to support your application. Maybe we'll request a meeting, but the majority of you are going to hear via email sometime in late June, early July about what the status of your application was. Were you accepted or were you not? Make sure that Queen's University is added to your email safe senders list, that you don't have our emails falling into your spam or junk mail, and that you're aware of what's provided out to you and that you receive our emails via your inbox. It's really key that you know that you're getting emails from Queen's, especially considering that that's the main communication point for all of us. We are not in the office. We don't have an opportunity to do phone calls. We have very limited capacity to do Zoom calls, and we're not going to be providing that out. So just be really, really mindful that email is the primary component here. Just receiving some questions whether this webinar will be posted later on the website. It will. We are recording this, so we are going to provide either parts or the entire webinar at a later point. Watch the Facebook page and watch our program website for further details on a recording of this webinar. So the question that we're receiving, COVID is causing issues with transcript delivery. What can I do? So we really want you to communicate with your previous post-secondary institution, no matter where it's located globally. Email is the best way to deliver transcripts. If that's not possible, there is an option for your previous post-secondary institution to deliver you sealed, signed transcripts. If that is the case, don't open them when you receive it. What you'll want to do is you'll want to take that envelope you've received from that post-secondary institution, put it into another envelope, and mail it directly to the School of Graduate Studies office. The address that I posted earlier is where you want to send them. So just make sure that email is your number one priority. If that's a way of that post-secondary institution emailing the School of Graduate Studies, that's great. But if the other way is possible when it comes to making sure that you receive your transcript still sealed in an official envelope, that you don't open it and you forward it directly to the School of Graduate Studies. Just receiving another notice from our team here. Someone from the faculty will be reaching out to students who are missing documents. So we have emailed, our team has emailed applicants who are still in that application submitted stage. We did that earlier this month. We will do it again later this month to inform you if your application has not been completed. We advise you at that point to work with the School of Graduate Studies office to determine what's outstanding. First, by logging into your application portal, see what's outstanding, and then communicating with them as to how you're going to be able to provide those materials in. Make sure that you do so and that you're doing so very quickly here. If you received an email from us earlier this month that your application was still in submitted status, that it wasn't complete, review, log in, and check to see what's outstanding. Another question that we receive quite often, I have copies of my transcripts not sealed. Can I send them into the office? Well, technically you can. We don't advise this. There are two reasons why. One is that transcripts that you send in directly to us. So say you received a copy of your transcript several years ago. It's the only transcript you have. It then becomes the property of Queen's. We don't return those transcripts back. So just be really mindful of that. Also, these transcripts aren't deemed official. Official transcripts are sealed by the institution and delivered physically or delivered directly from your previous institution right to the School of Graduate Studies. If there's student involvement and there's an open transcript, it's not deemed official. And while it may be used within the admission process, there's still going to be a requirement for you to submit official documents at a later date if you receive an offer of admission. So the real important thing is to have your previous post-secondary institution email those transcripts in, because we want to make sure that your documents are official and received correctly for us to do the assessment. Here's a very interesting question that we receive quite often. What English language proficiency tests or ELPTs do you accept? So Queen's accepts several different ones across the institution. The GDip ICL accepts the following: IELTS Academic, CALE Computer Edition or CE, the TOEFL paper-based, and the TOEFL internet-based tests. Now, we receive a lot of questions about CELPIP, about Duolingo, and about IELTS General. So maybe some of you have already taken these tests for previous reasons. We do not accept those tests, the Duolingo, the CELPIP, or the IELTS General. Also, what we don't accept are tests that are beyond 2 years from the point of application. So if your test is more than 2 years old from the time that you applied, we can't accept it and you'll have to retake and resubmit. There's a follow-up question. How do we determine whether someone's native language is English? So on the application, you identify that. If you've done all of your study in English, if you speak English at home, if that's just the language that you've always known, that's your native language. If it's not, if you speak another language at home, but you've done some studies in English, that may provide you an exemption from the ELPT requirement. But the admission committee does have criteria to determine if an ELPT will be required for individuals. Within your application, you've provided us this information. We'll do some further searching. What we tell all of our applicants, though, is that if you feel that you may be requested to submit an ELPT score, prepare for that as being the case. It may be something that you'll submit throughout the months of April or even May, depending on when we get to your application review, and we may request that. But take a look at the different options that are available. Look into these tests. A lot of them are virtual, which is fantastic. Like I mentioned, CALE is computer-based and TOEFL is internet-based as well. So you can prepare for those, and ideally you can submit your scores fairly quickly if you're requested at that time. If on your application you didn't identify as English as your native language, you haven't done any studies in English within the last year, you will be required to submit an ELPT. So begin the review process of looking into those scores or looking into those testing centers, and get ready to provide one of these tests, not one of these tests. So here's kind of going off of that outstanding, that the expired test scores. So if somebody took their IELTS in 2017, is it accepted? It is not. So basically, if you applied in January of this year, you would only be able to go back to January of 2020. If you have a test score that's beyond that, we would need a new one done for your application. So it has to be within 2 years of your application date. What are the ELP exemption requirements? As I mentioned, there are two. One is that you have studied full-time in a university with English as the primary language within 12 months from the date of your application. So if you were just in McMaster University, say, and you were studying English Lit, you would be exempt if you were a full-time student and you studied last year. If you had done studies several years ago, maybe 2005 or 2012, you are outside of the exemption range unless you meet that second exemption, which is completing the Queen's School of English, English for Academic Purposes course, or ESLA 150, with a minimum grade of A. That's not the primary exemption route. It is available, but we have some specific standards for that. And there's a conditional offer that's required for those individuals who want to take that course. It's a bit of a process, but if you are interested in that, look at the Queen's School of English website, find out the cost of tuition for that program, and perhaps the ELPT requirement will be cheaper and easier for you to access. How do you submit your ELPT scores? That's submitting them directly to the School of Graduate Studies office, sgsapp@queensu.ca. You can also CC Immigration Diploma at queensu.ca for those scores if you're sending them directly, or if you're having your program send them directly to the School of Graduate Studies, you can send it there, or grad.studies@queensu.ca. Make sure you're submitting all of your official documents directly to the School of Graduate Studies office. Here is a question that we get in regards to references. So within the SGS application, you may notice that a reference material has not been received yet. What do you do? So again, we encourage you to reach out to your reference, see if they received documents from Queen's. If they have, why haven't they filled it out? If there's an error, you can work with the School of Graduate Studies to potentially have them resent, but that's very, very limited. Try to work with your reference first to ensure that everything is accurate and that they've received the materials. We receive a question quite a bit in regards to, is there anyone in the program that I can talk to about their experience? We have testimonials on our website. You can see a few examples here of people who have been to the program who can provide their background. We don't have anything directly to connect our prospective students with current students. We're working on that though, and we encourage you to follow us on Facebook, or if you become a student, to find us on the LinkedIn program page. And there will be opportunities in the future to connect you with future students. Throughout the new student orientation, for any of our new students, we actually do have some sessions where we try to connect current students and instructors with our incoming class to provide you with an opportunity to ask questions about the program. So utilize that avenue if you are provided an offer of admission and you accept to become a program student in the fall. I'm an access pathway candidate. Is there anything else I need to do? So access pathway, the access pathway are for individuals who don't quite meet the admission requirements. Perhaps you didn't completely finish your undergrad program. Maybe you don't have the B average on your completed program. Perhaps there's an issue with statements, or you wanted to just provide and make sure that you have a different pathway. For our access pathway candidates, you have to submit a resume with at least 5 years of professional experience detailed on that resume. You actually email that directly to us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. And again, if you're emailing us a resume because you are an access pathway candidate, make sure that you list your application reference number in your email somewhere. So that's pretty much all of the frequently asked questions. This is where I'm going to stop and we're going to focus in on the questions that you've been providing us in written format via the Q&A. If there is anything else you want to ask us, or if we don't get to your question in today's session, you're going to have an opportunity to email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. Again, include your application reference number, be very clear in what you're asking us, and we will provide a response as quickly as we can. We have a lot of individuals here today. We've already received a lot of questions. So hopefully that we've answered you already, or that we're going to get to you. I'm going to go offline here. I'm going to join my team in answering questions, but this is the opportunity for you to ask us anything that you may have. Again, try to keep your questions to one question per thing that you send. We don't want long lists of questions, and we'll try our best to respond to everybody here today. If you wanted to continue and stay connected with us, our website is immigrationdiploma.queenslaw.ca. Go ahead and find us there. All of our program information is located there. The online status, all of the courses we offer, tuition and financing is listed there. The admission criteria. There's a great frequently asked questions section there that will hopefully clarify a lot of questions you may have. You can also find us on Facebook. Facebook.com/Queen's Law GDip ICL. We're going to be utilizing that for all of our admission purposes. It's going to be a great place for all of our prospective students to communicate with us there. Go ahead and join us, like the page. But the program website is going to be a primary source of information for you. And of course, today's session, asking your question to us is going to be really key. I am going to end it there. I want to thank everybody for participating here today. We're going to continue answering questions in the chat. So please stick around if you've asked a question we just haven't got to you yet. It is going to take some time. We have quite a few questions that have come in. So again, please be patient with us. But if we don't get to you today, you do have that option of emailing immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. If I can leave you with any final thoughts here from my session, make sure that you log into the School of Graduate Studies application system. Review your application and see what is outstanding. We want to make sure that all of your items that you've listed have that received status next to it, that the School of Graduate Studies has got it. We really want to see those come in. And we want to make sure that we have as many applications that we can assess as possible. It's going to be really important for you to make sure that you've completed your application. You know what is still outstanding at this point. We want all of your applications to move from submitted to documents received. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to mute myself here, and we will stick around here to ask any questions that are still coming in. So thank you very much for your participation, and have yourself a great day. One of the things I forgot to mention, I'll be jumping back in here to answer any additional questions that may be coming up consistently. We are receiving a lot of information, people asking about receiving an update on their status. We don't provide updates on status currently, aside from if your application is received or if there's still outstanding things that you need to provide. So if you wanted to, again, take a look in the SGS application system to see if there's anything outstanding. If everything is complete, you should be pretty much done at this point, and you're just waiting for word on the status of your application, whether you were accepted or not, in late June, early July. So if you have everything submitted, it is going to take some time for us to get back to you. Again, please be patient, and we'll make sure that we get to you as quickly as we can. So thank you very much for that. Again, I'm going to unmute. If there's consistent questions coming up, I'll come back into the call, I'll unmute, and I'll provide them verbally. Another question we're seeing come up consistently is, what is the fee structure? So I really encourage you to attend our website, and I'll make sure I put that back up onto the screen, Immigration Diploma at queenslaw.ca. There's a great link there called Tuition and Fees. I believe it's Tuition and Financing, actually. That's going to outline the exact costs for each course in the program. For our full-time students, you pay per term. So you're paying for all 3 courses up front. For part-time students, you pay for the number of courses that you're taking in any given term. So full-time students can complete the program in 12 months, 3 terms back to back to back, 3 courses per term. Roughly for full-time students, it's $5,000 for 2 of those terms, and it's just under, I believe it's around 4,200 for that 3rd term. For part-time students, it's going to vary. Part-time students take 1 or 2 courses per term across 24 or up to 36 months. Ideally, you're doing it in 2 years, though. So you're paying for the courses that you're taking. And for any of our part-time students, there's going to be a structured study plan for you that's going to be provided, so you know what courses you're going to be taking. So you'll be provided that information ahead of time. You can review what the courses cost, and you can plan out accordingly. It's why I encourage all of our applicants to apply for the GDip ICL Bursary. And I'm going to make sure I get that link out there to everyone. So you can apply if you're just waiting, if you're already in document received status and you're just waiting for a response, fill out the bursary application. It's a great opportunity to try and gain more financial funding for your studies, because our program is not OSAP eligible. So just be mindful of that. We are not eligible for OSAP. If you're currently paying back OSAP, if you go into our program, your OSAP doesn't pause like the way that some other programs, when you return to studies, it would. So just be mindful. There are different ways of receiving financial assistance. Our program has actually partnered with RBC to provide a line of credit, so that is available. For anybody who is in this session who is a brand new applicant, welcome. Fantastic of you to join us. But make sure that you get your email from Queen's that says you've submitted your application, that you now have access to the application portal. Log in and make sure that everything that you've submitted is received, and that you need to submit a bunch of different, if you need to submit more information, that you provide that directly to the School of Graduate Studies office. Read all of your emails in depthly. That's really important. Another consistent question that I'm seeing is that your profile within the School of Graduate Studies system doesn't show if you need to provide an English language proficiency test or not. That is not listed there on the admission process. We will inform individuals if we request it, but you should review the exemption requirements. If you've listed yourself as a native English speaker and you meet the exemption requirements, you won't need to submit it. For everybody else who doesn't meet any of those requirements, consider submitting whatever test scores you have available to you, or begin the process of reviewing what test scores you should be providing, or what test centers you want to take. So just be really mindful. We'll reach out to people if we require it throughout the admission process. For everybody else, you should be considering submitting those as soon as you can. Questions in regards to official transcript delivery. So the program we can use PDF copies of transcripts for the admission process. It's actually why we ask you to submit your PDF copies throughout the application process. It makes our job a lot easier, so we can get a response to you back as quickly as we can. Official documents will only be required should you gain entry into the program, because then the School of Graduate Studies wants to see an official paper copy of your transcript or an email copy of your transcript from your institution on their files. So just be mindful that PDF copies are acceptable. Work with the School of Graduate Studies to submit anything that hasn't already been submitted with your application. And then hopefully we'll be able to assist you and get your response in throughout the admission process. I'm also seeing questions in regards to if you've applied for full-time or if you've applied for part-time switching throughout the program. We have a program coordinator team. We have individuals who would support that request if you wish to do so. So just make our office aware that that's what your request is. Ideally, that what you've selected on your application is accurate, but if there are concerns with switching between one or the other, we can work with you once we go through the admission review process. So for those individuals who are logging into the School of Graduate Studies system and they are still seeing that things are in application submitted status, what I would recommend you do is reach out to their office and determine if all of your documents are in, why you're still in that status, what's the rationale for that, And again, they can be reached at sgsapp@queensu.ca or grad.studies@queensu.ca. Again, provide your application reference number and only email those individuals. Some of you may be emailing different offices across campus. We have received notice that the undergraduate program is receiving emails from our individuals. Other programs like the Smith School of Business or the engineering building, the other programs within the Faculty of Law, the JD program and their PhD program are receiving questions. There are only two places that you really need to go to receive answers in regards to our program. That is the Immigration Diploma at queensu.ca email address, as well as the School of Graduate Studies application system. So that SGS app or grad.studies@queensu.ca email addresses. Those are the only places you need to go for answers to your questions. Don't email any other group. Also, don't look for a physical location for us. We are not on campus and we don't have opportunities to do phone calls. Email is going to be your best route to find out more information from us. For those who are in document received status, if you're good to go, as I recommended, definitely apply for the GDip ICL Bursary application now. That application will close on April 1st. So for anybody here who is interested in going into the program full time, I recommend that you fill out the application. Actually, it is going to be extended. That's my apologies. I was incorrect there. It's going to be extended until May 1st. So I'm going to go ahead and find that, that link for you and put it into the chat so that you have it and you'll be able to apply for our bursary at any point between now and May 1st. That application is done through the Student Awards Office. So they have a separate site for that. So just make sure that you're completing the form. The individuals who receive an offer of admission will also be notified about the bursary success. So just make sure that you are awaiting at that point the information regarding the bursary. Excellent question in here a couple times actually in regards to changes to your application in the SGS application portal. Those are done on a very limited basis, and you're going to have to reach out to the School of Graduate Studies office to request any of these changes. What we like to do is that once you submit your application, it's received and it's locked in. They may be able to make an adjustment to a name or a phone number, but again, reach out to them, sgsapp@queensu.ca or grad.studies@queensu.ca, provide your reference number and ask them what you're looking to change. So April 8th was listed as the document deadline for a good majority of documents. Ideally, that's for transcripts and your current English proficiency test scores if you have them. If you are currently going through an ELPT and you're taking it in preparation for this program, whenever you receive the test scores, submit them. Ideally, we'll receive them by the end of April, if not into early May. We still will be making admission decisions throughout the months of April, May, and into early June. So you do have a little bit of time for your ELPTs. So just make sure that if you feel you need to provide them and you don't meet the exemptions that are listed there, make sure that you're preparing yourself for that. We have individuals who are asking about part-time studies. Can you do more than 2 courses? You cannot. The part-time structure is very specific. There may be an opportunity to move you to full-time at that point, but again, that will be a determination of the program. So just be prepared that if you have applied for part-time, that you're prepared to do no more than 2 courses per term over the 24-month period. If you are in documents received status in your application system, you see that everything has been listed as received. Your application is complete, but again, just make sure that you're reviewing that SGS portal and that you do see that it's not application submitted, it's documents received. Bursary application. I'm currently just looking up the bursary application. I will provide that out. The bursary is only for full-time students, so be mindful of that. See some questions in regards to postgraduate work permits. Our students are not eligible for PGWPs because we are purely online, not online because of the pandemic. So just be mindful for that. So things like OSAP and PGWPs, our students aren't eligible for that. I have just sent out the link to the bursary application. It's at queensu.ca/student awards/forms/queens-bursaries. It's a long title. Ideally, everybody has received it in the chat. If not, you can find it on our program website under the tuition and financing link. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you'll see bursaries and awards, and it does provide you the link to the Queen's bursary forms. Okay, if it's not available there, I'll see if there's a way that I can publish it for everyone. So in regards to the bursary, where it's asking for a student number, technically all of our applicants are moved into the Queen's student system SOLAS. So you will receive a student number. So it should be listed somewhere in either an email or via your application in the SGS application system. You can find it there. If you're a new applicant, it's not going to be produced yet. It's going to take a little bit of time to migrate your application over into the system. So just wait. But again, the bursary application is open until May 1st. So you do have some time so that your stuff can be migrated over. I am recognizing that it doesn't seem like people are able to receive the link here in the chat because it's disabled. I'm going to read it out for you again. But again, it can be found at the bottom of our tuition and financing page through our program site. But the bursary application is at queensu.ca/student awards/forms/queens-bursaries, BURSARIES. We will make sure that it is provided out somehow, but it is available via our program site. So it looks like there's a little confusion in regards to submission of transcripts. If you submitted PDF copies of your transcripts with your application, those are going to be received and accepted so long as they are official transcripts, like proper transcripts with grades and indicating that you completed your program, or it has some listing of your undergraduate studies. Those are going to be accepted for the admission process. Official transcripts will be necessary for all of our students who are admitted into the program at a later date in order to complete your physical student file on campus. So don't worry about having your institution submit official documents if you've already submitted your PDF copies and they have been received by the School of Graduate Studies. You'll only need to send official documents at a later date if you're entered into the program. For individuals who did not submit transcripts with the application, you will need to involve your previous post-secondary institutions to email transcripts into the School of Graduate Studies office for review for our admission purposes. That will complete the official document requirement at a later point as well, but it's primarily to get documents into that office for our admission review. Work with their office as well if you have PDF copies of your transcripts or can access that. So for example, myself, I went to York University. I can go back into the York student portal as an alumni and access my transcripts. You can do the same, hopefully, with your previous institutions, especially those from Canadian institutions. You can access those details. You can then send the PDF copies to the School of Graduate Studies via email and ask if they would accept it for the admission process. But again, it's not going to complete that official requirement should you become a student. I'm seeing a question here. I'm assuming there's probably another question about third-party assessment. So WES or ICES, I believe it's ICES. We don't accept those to meet the admission requirement for submission of documents. We accept them to support your application, but we will still need to see your original English versions of your transcripts. In regards to fee payments, for anybody who is looking for more information about how to pay for the program, our recommendation is to visit our program site and look at tuition and financing. Also to look at the Office of the University Registrar. We don't accept the tuition payments directly through our program. You do that through Queen's University, and there's more information about payment plans and options available through their site. So just make sure that you review all of those locations. More information about the tuition and fees can absolutely assist when it comes to those who are admitted into the program. But more information you can look up now, the better, and prepare yourself for the payment of any tuition fees per term. So if you're a full-time student, you're paying for the first term. If you're a part-time student, you're paying for the term, but only the classes that you're taking. So either 1 or 2 classes at that point. The other fees that you should take into consideration, of course, is the textbooks. Textbooks, there is a great site that we utilize to do virtual textbooks, and I believe it's roughly about $400, but of course that fee will change year in, year out, depending on the textbooks that are necessary for the course. So just be mindful of that. There's also a very small student levy fee of about $34. If you have any of your English language proficiency test scores available to you and they are within that 2-year deadline of having them be admissible, I recommend that you submit them into the School of Graduate Studies, SGS app at queensu.ca or grad.studies at queensu.ca, connected with your application reference number so that we receive them. I've received a request to explain the English language proficiency exemptions. So there are 2 exemptions that we provide. One is if you studied in full time within 1 year from the date of your application. So say you've applied in January and you just graduated from Carleton University, and that was done in April of last year. You will, if you did full-time studies in your final year there, you would definitely be able to be exempt for the English language proficiency test. If you have studied in English outside of that 1 year from the point of your application, you can still provide information as to why you feel you're exempt, but you would be required to provide an ELPT should you be requested by the admission committee. The other the exemption is if you wish to take the Queen's School of English for Academic Purposes ESLA 150 course. In that regard, you would need a conditional offer of admission for us. You'd need to let us know if that's the intention. It's an expensive course, so just be mindful of that. Look at their Queen's School of English website for more information and see if that is something that you want to take. You have to complete that course with an A grade, and it may take more than 1 term. So just be mindful that there are some different conditions than receiving an English language proficiency test score that you can just submit directly to us. An ELPT score will be cheaper and it will be quicker and it will meet the admission requirements, but our admission committee can request this throughout the admission process. So just be mindful of that. And we may need to provide that. You may need to provide that at some point. looks like the chat has just been enabled, so people should receive the bursary link now. You can find that there. Go ahead and complete that. You have until May 1st to complete it. Okay, we have a request in regards to the ELPT scores. You cannot submit multiple tests to make up a total score. You need to submit one test that has all of the requirements. I'm actually going to go through the requirements here as well. So for any individual who's going to take the IELTS academic test, you need to have a minimum overall score of 7.0 with at least 7.0 for each component. So you need 7.0 or higher in all of that and an overall score of 7.0. For TOEFL paper-based, you need a minimum overall score of 607. For TOEFL internet-based, you need to have an overall score of 101 with a minimum score in writing of 25 out of 30, in speaking 25 out of 30, reading 25 out of 30, and listening 26 out of 30. For CALE, the computer edition, you need to have a minimum overall score of 70. So for anybody who's looking into the School of Graduate Studies site and they see that their documents have been all received, but they're still sitting in application like submitted status, make sure that you review this with the School of Graduate Studies and confirm that everything is fine and that your application will be accepted for the admission review process. So please be really mindful of that. Reach out to School of Graduate Studies. They're going to be your great resource when it comes to your application itself. We don't manage that system. It's going to be really important to make sure that they confirm that all of your documents were received, or if there's anything outstanding, that they can assist you further. If all of your documents have been received, you're still waiting to be moved over to some documents received status, you can go ahead and complete the bursary application. We encourage everybody to fill out the bursary. The more people that we have filling that out, ideally we can reach our maximum allowance of what we can offer out for financial support. So please fill that out. So I've just been asked to repeat the scores. I'm actually going to post them into the chat. This can be found on our website, immigrationdiploma.queenslaw.ca/admissions. And I'm just going to publish out the scores to everybody there. So you should be able to see them in the chat now. The 4 different tests that we accept, 3 technically because there's 2 TOEFL tests there, but they are still a little bit different. And they have specific criteria for each of them. Hopefully you're able to meet the requirements and submit your ELPTs as quickly as you can. We aren't answering questions in the chat. The chat is only for us to be able to provide you information. Please continue to use the Q&A box to submit any questions you may have. We will be closing up the webinar at 12:30. So just be mindful that we still have a lot of questions already received. If you don't receive an answer to us by the time that we close out the webinar, that we will be shutting down, and you can email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca for more information. But I do encourage to reach out to School of Graduate Studies just to determine the status of your application. Make sure that everything's good there. Log into the system. If you haven't received emails from Queens, look for them in your inbox and make sure that you're coordinating with the School of Graduate Studies office, that your application, your information has been received, all documents have been accepted, and you're going to be moved to our program for our admission review. We will send out additional notifications to anybody who still hasn't submitted all of their documents before the April 1st closure of the application. So we'll let you know if it's still sitting in application submitted and we still need some documents. So just be mindful, you'll receive an email from us even if you've worked with the School of Graduate Studies, if you're still looking for additional things, like you'll receive notice from us later this month if there's still things outstanding. One of the things I want to stress for the individuals still on the call here today is that the program does require a considerable amount of attention paid to your studies. Just really be mindful of how you study and that you're going to be able to provide the full attention to your studies, whether you're a full-time or a part-time student. One of the main focuses is that you attend the mandatory tutorials with the course. There are only 2 hours of tutorials per course per week. So if you're only taking one course, you'll only be required to be in one tutorial per week. That changes for the final course in the program, ICL 890. There's 3 hours of tutorials, but you still need to be online and available to attend those tutorials. You'll have some flexibility as to when those tutorials are offered, and that'll be more information for students who are accepted into the program. But the considerable amount of time spent is on the self-directed study. Readings, assignments online, discussions through chats and through our on-queue system, group work. There's lots of things that you're going to be doing on your own time. So make sure that you understand the timing and the amount of attention that needs to be paid to this program. We don't encourage people to be working full-time if they're full-time studiers. I mean, we understand the difficulties of that, but it's a grad school program. You need to commit yourself to the studies. And if you're able to commit that, you'll do great things with the program. So really make sure that you're reviewing what the commitment is for this program, and that you're putting in the right amount of time to make sure that you're successful and you're able to graduate with really great marks. Anybody can apply for the bursary prior to receiving a notification of offer. The bursary information goes hand in hand with an offer of admission. So we actually do require bursary submissions to be provided before we even begin our review process. Typically, we close the bursary application the same day we close the program application. And then we do processes to make sure that both us and Student Awards work in tandem. So you will receive a bursary offer with your offer of admission. So just be mindful of that. I absolutely recommend that you apply for the bursary even before a decision is made, because you won't have the option to apply for the bursary if you receive an offer of admission. It will be too late. You'll have to submit all of your bursary information ahead of time, and we build that into our assessment process and partnering up with the school of the Student Awards Office, and then they do their assessments as to who will receive bursaries. There is no current phone number to reach out to our office. We do not have access to phones at this point. We are looking into providing opportunities for one-on-one calls, virtual calls, but even at this point, that's unconfirmed. So we're unable to provide that information at this point. Email is the only way to really communicate with us and get questions answered in regards to your application, in regards to the program, or any additional information you're seeking. We have an excellent question in the chat. Somebody is asking about the RCIC entry to practice exam with the college, and it's related to the English language proficiency tests. Previously, the college did require those who are interested in taking the EPE to submit English language proficiency test scores and meet their requirements. Because Queen's is the English language pathway into becoming an RCIC, the college no longer requires you to submit ELPT scores. It's why we require them to be submitted with your application. So our standards beat the college's standards. And once you go through our program, you've met their English language requirement, and you can write the EPE without needing to resubmit your test scores. So our minimums are now the industry standard minimums, and it's why we're so rigid on providing minimal exemptions, and we need to see test scores from those individuals applying to our program. The bursary application will not influence any application decisions whatsoever. Those are done by two different offices. Our office deals with admissions, and the Student Awards office deals with the issuing of bursaries. They do all of their requirements. They are the experts in the field of understanding financial need. We just submit them the names of who is going to be eligible for admission into the program, and they match up that with the bursary applications that were submitted, which is why we encourage everybody to submit your bursary application prior to the May 1st deadline. For anybody who's gone through the college system, who is recently a college program attendee or graduate, the requirement for the exemption for English language proficiency test is attendance at a university. So just be mindful that we will still potentially request an English language proficiency test from you, even though you've gone through the college system. There is still opportunities within the application that you would have provided that details your exemption request, but the admission committee may still request an ELPT. So do review the accepted test sites that we provide on our website and see which one best suits you, and see if you'd be able to prepare that and be able to submit scores within our admission review process. I am actually going to provide the link to the Facebook group. So give me 1 second. I'm going to provide that in the chat for everybody. Please like that page. There'll be great information there in regards to admissions. IELTS General, CELPIP, and Duolingo are test scores that we do not accept. We only accept IELTS Academic, TOEFL paper-based, TOEFL internet-based, or CALE computer edition. So I'll reiterate kind of the details in regards to next steps. So individuals will receive notification about the success of their application in late June, early July. So it's going to take our admission committee quite some time to go through all of our applications. We're a very popular program, which is fantastic, but it is still going to take some time to go through that. We will close the application as of April 1st. We will begin our assessments on April 4th, and it will take us some time to review. So at the end of July or end of June, early July, you'll receive email notification about the status of your application, whether you were accepted into the program or not. And that is how you'll find out about the program. And if you'll be moving into the offer stage, you'll have a short window of opportunity to accept an offer of admission for anybody who is offered admission into the program. So just be really mindful that you're checking your email. You have Queens as your safe sender on your safe senders list, that we're not falling into your junk mail or spam folders on whatever email address you've provided with your application, and that you're ready to receive our information. And that if you do receive an offer, that you're willing to accept it in a quick period of time. We'll actually be holding another webinar in July for those individuals who are offered admission to answer any questions at that point. So just be aware of that. So for anybody still in the call here, the big focus will be going into the next phases here of your application. Log into the School of Graduate Studies system and find out if any documents are still outstanding. If they are still outstanding, make sure that you are providing them to the School of Graduate Studies office as soon as possible. When it comes to your transcripts, if you didn't upload transcripts with your application, and by transcripts, I mean detailed documents that have the courses you took with the scores provided. If you only submitted a copy of your final diploma or degree, that doesn't count as a transcript. A transcript has to outline the courses you took, the grades that you received, and that you completed the program in full. And you're going to have to provide those from all of the post-secondary institutions that you studied at, whether it's bachelor's, master's, or PhD. Anything that you've listed on your application, we need to receive a transcript from. If you provided them with your application and they are received, fantastic. That's a really great step. If you didn't submit your transcripts in PDF format with your application, or if the School of Graduate Studies deemed that your submission was not suitable to meet the needs of receiving a transcript, make sure that you work with the School of Graduate Studies at sgsapp@queensu.ca or grad.studies@queensu.ca to make sure that you're able to submit PDF copies of your transcripts for the admission review process. For any reference documents that are still outstanding, contact your references, find out if they received the materials from Queens and that they'll fill out the materials directly for you and send it back. If there's some error with the references, work with the School of Graduate Studies to correct this error. There is also a form that you can provide to them that they can fill out, but the ideal situation is that they received the email once you submitted your application and that they fill out the documents. Once you've received all that information, and if everything is in for your application, you are now just sitting and waiting for that next step. I encourage you to apply for the bursary, to review Queens and the industry, the immigration consultant industry, working to learn or how to learn in our program, self-directed learning, make sure that everything is suitable for online study because our program is completely online, and just await further information about the admission process. We may communicate with you during the admission process, but we will email everybody who has submitted an official application by the end of June or early July. So just be mindful of that. If you are taking an English language proficiency test and you're going to be submitting your test scores soon, please do so through the School of Graduate Studies. You can submit those throughout the month of April. Ideally, all transcripts are provided by April 8th. But we really want to move forward with as many of the reviews as possible. So get your information in as best as you can. We are going to close up this webinar here today. More information, you can email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. I'll just go back here and show that. But thank you very much for participating. We're sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. We had a good number of individuals here today. We really appreciate your attendance. And if you want to reach out to us, by all means, but again, log into your system, check the status of your application, and make sure all of your documents are submitted. Thank you very much for being a part of today's session. Take care, and we hope to see you in the fall.